Good morning, and thank you very much, Elia. It was very enlightening, and we've been talking the past 2 or 3 days with Elia about this presentation, and I said thank you very much for Elia for this presentation. She spent a lot of time trying to make the presentation, and she spent a lot of time making things possible to make sense for a normal person to understand the structure of the the mechanical side of the body of the man and its feeding system. As you know, we have emotional and physical part of the brain, as we talked in the past talks. The talk today is more or less about how the body of the man has become a conversion system. Everything which Elia went through, from the mouth to anus, and all the facilities and systems which has taken billions of years for its mutation, and then for its conversion, and then for its correction, is being put in one package we call the physical human body, from what I call the mouth to the legs, without the arms and legs. Arms and legs are the wheels for the motion of this system, for this machine, what we call human body. They have no other function. You can't have a car without the wheels, it goes nowhere. The section which we talk about, which is the mouth, coming to all sorts of mechanism we've seen in the center core of the human body, altogether is nothing but a conversion system. What does this mean? The energy of the sun in reaching the earth, and in conjunction and in collaboration with the materials on this planet, convert themselves to a digestible system, material, for man or other entities to be available to have large packages in one go. That over time, the evolution has made a conversion system for it, what we call the digestion system. So what happens? The energy of the sun in a plasmatic magnetic field form reaches the earth, upper atmosphere, in converting to nitrogen, or releasing a plasmatic condition equal to plasma of a nitrogen, and then subsequent division of this material or this entity into helium and hydrogen, and thereon, with their interaction and reduction or increase in energy to carbon and oxygen consequently, then coming in touch with the material part of the earth, becoming protein of different forms, red protein or movable vertical protein, what we call animals, and horizontal protein, which we call vegetables. Then when you put these different type of proteins, or what you call minerals, which are digestible, through the mouth, the whole process of reversal starts, which means now once this new combination as a matter state arrives in the mouth of the man or animal or any entity like human body, then the whole process is to convert back the matter again to the energy of the sun. And this process, you call it digestion system. There is no more to the human body in a digestion part than a conversion from matter back to plasma. The plasma of the sun converts into matter, and through our digestion system we convert the matter back into plasma. That is, plasmatic gravitational magnetic field can be used to add to the human bodies or working and maintaining this machine in action. So our physical part is nothing but a conversion system of energy from matter to do one thing: to keep the thalamus, which is the emotional part of the human body, which is connected to the soul of the man, in working condition. All this facade is nothing but a conversion for the existence of the thalamus. All the brain structure to control this physicality is the same. But you got to look at the structure. The structure is like a factory. You bring raw material, you convert it, like very much like a refinery. You bring the combination of metals in, you melt it, and then in melting it, you forge it to what you like. When it comes in, it could be in the ore condition, like iron ore. When you melt it in different shape or form that you can manipulate it, it becomes plate, fork, knife, a spoon, the body of a car, and the rest. And this is exactly what your digestion system does. It brings in, melts it, opens it, softens it, brings it to a condition that the energy which was given to it through the conversion through the sun to go back to become the sun. And then it extracts its energy in the form of plasmatic magnetic field across the wall of intestine into the lymph of a man, that then the body of the man through different glands decide what this lymph is going to become. When you eat celery, or when you eat vitamin B12 in your mouth, you don't say this is B12, it has to go to such and such a place. The energy of it, the plasmatic gravitational magnetic field which it releases in the intestine, which adds to the lymph, makes that energy available for the body to convert it where it wants, when it wants. In a way, when you digest the food and energy is converted and added to the lymph, the conversion system in releasing the energy at the intestine level is like the sun. The sun radiates out. It gives nourishment. Then, depending on where the organ is or what is creating, decides what that energy is going to become. If you go back to the teaching of yesterday, the sun sits at the center. Where the energy is of the right order, when it reaches the earth, it creates the material for earth. And when the same plasmatic energy from the sun goes further and it has a different characteristics and property, become helium, becomes part of the Saturn. So the organs of the man, doesn't matter whatever you call them, are satellites, stars, and the planets. Combination of a star being the digestion system releasing the energy as intestine from the matter point of view, and the organs are the planets. And what each planet absorbs from this plasma dictates how it shows and manifests itself. But in the body of man, we have put a regulation system, what we call thymus and what we call parathyroid gland. They are the only functioning organization in the human body which dictate what matter becomes matter, what energy becomes matter, and at what strength they become matter. So parotid glands, they decide this energy will be, let's say, phosphor, and then thymus decides to what strength is going to be, a soft phosphor, hard phosphor, or would it behave like a calcium and becomes a bone structure. Then the parotid glands order follows, the energy which they release. So in a way, the parotid glands in conjunction with thymus become the thermometers. Would you like it ice? Would you like it in a steam condition? Or would you like it to be very much liquid? Then if it's liquid, it becomes the blood. If it is in a steam soft condition, like not very hot, not very cold, becomes your muscle tissues, and when it freezes up at a given strength, it becomes bones and hard part of your body. The whole process of the physical part is to be able to extract energy from the environment to keep the emotional part of the body in action. One of the fundamental things which the world of science, and especially medicine, and especially the people who deal with the digestion system and human body have never understood, and you all understand in a very simple way, because you've been working with the different reactors and different gases and different things in the past year, is that there is no difference between the operation of the body of the man and the reactor cores which you have. You put matter in a state of gas in your reactors with a mixture of water, and the minute you start moving within this structure, even the water behaves like a gas. It becomes in a gas state behavior. As you've seen it, you can put it in a freezer, it doesn't freeze, you can do whatever you like with it. So because the water and whatever is inside it is in the environment of the plasmatic gravitational magnetic field of the GANs of, let's say, copper or CO2, it starts immediately behaving like one as well. So what does this mean? This means the instant that you enter the food in your mouth, doesn't matter in what shape, water, air to breathe in, a meat, sugar, the instant they pass the upper part of the mouth into the channel to go down, they become captured, they become part of a GANs state of matter. And from that moment on, when you enter your food in your mouth and you close your mouth, the food changes from behavior of matter into the GANs state. And from that point on, it's like the water in your reactors, which you add water, but the minute you close your reactor and rotate it, because it's surrounded by the GANs, it behaves as a GANs. Now the food in your mouth is not matter state anymore. Until the point when it comes out of the body, doesn't matter in what form or shape, stays in that matter till the conversion systems come into operation to make it ready to become and will be released in a matter state. Look at your bladder, is one of the points of conversion, and your big intestine is another port of conversion of GANs to matter state before discharge. So the instant you swallow, you put something in your mouth, which is to be digested, the information through the GANs of the state, through the glands in the mouth, and through enzymes, what you call enzymes, what we call information carriers of the direct digestion system, they start sending gravitational magnetic fields that opens up the structure of this new gans. It's very much water cannot do anything with piece of iron. But if you create a warm environment, the iron will open up. If you create the right temperature that the atomic structure can loosen up, the matter gets. In the stomach, you cannot start a fire. So what do? We call them enzymes, but in fact, enzymes are different gravitational magnetic field materials which allow the amalgamation or opening up of the plasma of the matter state which is entered in a plasma condition into the stomach to release themselves or release their energies into ready to be taken at the right strength. So what happens when the what you call the enzymes in the stomach release or create an environment that, as I said in the other lectures in the different part of the teachings, that you create a plasmatic gravitational magnetic field, that the magnetic field of, let's say, hydrogen becomes equal to its environment, and it opens up and becomes part of it. And then it becomes one thing. And then once you've done this opening of the plasma, as it goes through intestine, different part of the intestine has different structure, and the structure means different condition. And because of the materials and the gases which they are made of, they create different gravitational magnetic field magnets for different strength plasmas which are going through the intestine. So now it becomes a conveyor belt that each part of the intestine is responsible for picking up what is responsible for. If you've been into what are called recycling factories, where they bring a lot of clothing, you see they put everything on a conveyor belt. And one person is only responsible for shirt, and one person is only responsible for underwear, and one person is only responsible when the shirt comes, if he can pick up the blue shirt only. And the other one on the conveyor belt only picks up the shirt which they call the damaged arm. And this is how your stomach works. But with the difference that, as we saw with the pictures that Dr. Elia showed, different structure of the tube, of the nanotube of the intestine, this nanotube is not constantly the same thing. Through different layers behind it, they create different gravitational magnetic field. Because the lining of the stomach is in a nano-state condition, nothing can stick to it. That be no nano layers, nanomaterials cannot be soldered. So the food literally swims and floats over a magnetic plate conveyor belt as it goes further down. And each gravitational magnetic field, very much the way you extract electron current from the environment through nanolayers and to the matter, creates a condition of gravitational magnetic field for a specific strength. Then we call it, this is for vitamin A, this section, this does the vitamin B, this section absorbs different entities of plasmatic condition strength. And then this energy is passed on to what we call transparent liquid, we call it lymph, which is another conveyor belt in the whole structure. So at the end, when it becomes to the big intestine, then the matter, anything which had the energy which is equal to amino acid and the strength of the digestion tube of the intestine, which is not needed anymore, now has to be converted back into a GANS state, but still being in the matter GANS state. And then it discharges in all sorts of shapes and forms. And then if you go one step further, what is discharged, why it is used again for fertilizers or whatever, is because the system is already in the GANS state, so it can be digested by the proteins of the plants or whatever to regrow faster. That's why we use animal excrements for fertilizer, because it's already converted GANS state material. It's like the CO2s we see in the Chinese colleagues have shown how it affects the condition of the growth. Because now you deliver a GANS state of matter ready, and because it's converted to GANS, the plants absorb it much easier because they don't need to convert it. And that's why we use fertilizers. Because it's a GANS state material state. That's why if you go a step further, synthetic fertilizers are the problem. Because they are in a matter state, they have to be converted, and that conversion creates all sorts of problems for the plant. Where the digestive system of the man or animal, what it puts out is in a GANS state, and it feeds directly. So, what comes back to why all this conversion and all this work? There is something which we go back to one of the first pictures which Dr. Elia put on the screen, where we saw the mouth and the anus are the two ends of one tube. In reality, the two ends of this tube, or one tube I should say in different shapes, is two ends of one magnetic field canal or a channel or a wire, where in this magnetic field tube a given specific energy allows the manifestation of the man as a matter. And that's the total purpose of this tube. What I call this empty sausage is to be able to create a condition around it to allow the manifestation and presentation and physical appearance of the man. And nothing more. That this state of entity in supporting the plasmatic magnetic field, what we call the emotional part, allows it to give essence to the creation as a man and their soul. This is how we view digestion system in a physical entity like a man and nothing more. And there is no other purpose for it. And man has made it such an amazing thing that nobody knows how it's done. It's one of the simplest systems. It has a factory, it has a storage capacity for what it takes, we call it liver. It has a cleaning up that it cleans up whatever is not needed to filter it out, like a sewage system, you call it kidney. And it stores its sewage, you call it bladder. And there is nothing else to this life and no more. So, when you create different conditions for this sewage system, you end up with different solidifications and what you call different cancers and diseases. If the man understands that through the emotional part can control everything in the physicality because it's responsible for it, because it's encaged it, then man can survive for millions of years in space, as other creatures do. The human body is one of the shortest living amoebas in the universe. Because it's weak and it uses very weak gravitational magnetic field for its existence. And in fact is not edible at all by any other creatures. That's why man stays as man and you don't get hunted like your food as the man hunts animals. Because the energy release is so minute that it's not even worth hunting for. And secondly, in space no creature eats another species. We tap into the boundary of the energy beyond the intestine when it's in the energy form and not the entity. In fact, the lymph of the man is exactly in the pure state, has no living structure as such which can make a decision. Is in a state of energy and not state of matter, but in clusters, what you call the cells. It has not materialized, and it has not a decision-making organization. It's just packages which has size, and the size of the lymph liquid is dictated by the environment around it. But it has a life that it reproduces through conditions of division. So, what has been the mystery of the physicality of man is nothing but conversion of matters to one state to another, to be able to manifest itself as a physical entity, to show the existence of the emotion and the soul which exists, and it shows itself in the physical entity as body of the man. It's very much as I said in the talks recently, if you are in a room, the moisture is there, you don't see it. When you make the condition outside but cooler and inside is warm, you see moisture on the window, on the glass. And the man is the moisture on the glass, and no more. Where the condition of this environment of the earth allows that energy or to show itself as an entity, which is the body of the man. And that point of conversion is what you call your digestion system. So, how do we look at it, and why do we do so much to keep this physical entity in motion and do so much harm to each other, to manifest what is so pure and beautiful, what we call emotion, which is connected to the soul? This is one of the biggest mysteries of the creation, and that is why the soul, through the emotional part of its power, allows physicality as a leech to attach itself to it, that it can manifest its own existence and presence. Why do we choose, as Dr. Elia showed, sexual organs to reproduce another physicality? Is nothing but the lack of understanding by the condition of this planet into existence of the creation. In time when the man with a new technology goes into space, and the emotional side of the brain, which is the thalamus, realizes can have energy back again without the conversion, then we'll find again another series of evolution in the body of the man. One of the first things we will see in the coming time, in decades, in a very fast conversion, will be reduction in the intestine, then in the stomach, then not necessarily physical body of the man. It'll be much slimmer like other creatures in the universe, because digestion system is not needed away. But if you keep the physicality, you need to keep it in motion. You still have a moving part, what I call the wheels, which is the legs and the arms. Creation and created things like the human body is very common in the universe, when the physicality condition like this planet has forced the part of the interaction of certain creatures to manifest themselves as a body of entity, like the body of the man. The rest, the shape, the size, the color, is dependent on how the planet or the environment in the space has allowed this solidification to appear and to develop. So, in the time that we have opened the doors, you'll come across hundreds of thousands of different entities like human, with moving legs and arms and different kind of size of control panel, what we call the head and the brain. Because this is a natural process. You call them aliens. They have different color, shape of eyes, head, the head in different positions, multiple heads, multiple ears, or whatever, or multiple arms. These all, like man, has been dictated by the environment they've been accustomed to, because they needed more mobility or different kind of mobility to be able to extract energy in packages that they can consume. And once they come into space, their physicality stays very much what they had in the planet where they come from, but the body structure over time changes. And like as we go to walking on the street, you see one is young, one is old, one is middle-aged, and one is very old. When you go to space, by the shape and the presentation, appearance of the entities, you understand the maturity of the time and how long they've been in space. Because the more you stay in the space, the less need is for the organs to be used and needed. Because most of the energy will be absorbed on the skin level, on the contact point between the entity and the gans of the body. So, a digestion system, as you call it, from the mouth to anus, with this storage capacity and the conversion, being a conversion of air or solid into the lungs, as we spoke before, is nothing but for the manifestation of physicality of the soul and this emotional part. The point you have to further add to your knowledge is that at the moment when the lung inhales matter as a gas in, which is where it came from originally, because the amino acid, its origin comes from the gas from atmosphere of this planet, and that's why we use the CO2 to exhale it out, or we absorb, extract air from the environment for our lung. The instant that the air or the food enters the body of the man and behaves like a gas, it releases up to 80% of its energy instantaneously in the environment, because now it's opened up. This is the same as in the in your original boxes of CO2. When you put nano-coated material, now that it was nano-coated as the food, you put the food in your mouth, into the water, you could light up the lights or run a motor. Instantaneously the energy is released to become open, to become able to be part of, to release, become a gas, as you've seen in your containers. And that energy is instantaneously, through the vortex of the north-south pole, as you call it, rotation of magnetic field, feeds through the bottom of the brain into the emotional part. So, emotional part of the body of the man receives most of, or nearly all of his energy from the instant the air or the food enters the body of the man. It does not need the heart to pump it up, and it does not need the lymph to carry it around. You have hardly any lymph compared to its size around the brain of the man. You have a brain liquid, the liquid which is there and in gone, and most of the liquid in the physical part of the brain is for the physicality and the veins which are physical in the structure on the outer boundary. The physical human brain receives its energy and the growth of what it needs from the energy which is released the instant the material enters the body and becomes in a gas state, and not through the conversion of the blood or digestion system, which is the 20% of it. So when the food reaches the stomach, more or less at that point has released all its energy, and through the flow of magnetic poles, which is the north and the south of the brain, and what you call the anus, The field moves upwards through the field pressures which are created through the pumping of the heart to the brain directly. In a way, the physical pumping of the heart and the magnetic field which creates, it shows the direction of the flow of the field to the top, to the brain, and the bottom narrow end of the heart connects with the reproduction line for passing of the energy to it for the production of the next generation. In so many ways, man has not even understood the full working of his own body. And this is how the new technology, you can compare parallel page by page from what you've done from last year. Now you understand how your brain grows, why there are no feeding line as such to the brain. There are bloodlines going for the physicality in the extremities, and partially the gravitational magnetic field of the blood with what comes through instant conversion into plasmatic magnetic fields from the energy of what you breathe and you digest, going up to the brain, dictates what solidification and what material will be solidified in what part of the brain, in which form, which ends up to be the leg or the arm part of the body. That's why you don't have blood vessels in the brain of the man as such, unless it's for the physical part. Because the feeding does not come through the lymph. The feeding and the digestion system and the release of what the brain doesn't need comes through the gravitational magnetic field, which the air and the food release at the bottom of, into the throat, up to the bottom of the, what do you call it, the brain, the emotional part. And then the emotional part, in turn, what it does not need, releases upwards. That's why, for example, when you're under stress and you breathe different way, you release different kind of energies because of your breathing, and if this energy is too much and is not needed by the emotional part, thalamus, then it releases in one go and becomes a brain hemorrhage, because this is a channel of release. That's why the human brain is divided in two halves, left and right, because the gap and the gap to you is nothing. The two sides of the brain are more or less packed to each other. But because of the nano separation between them, there are the channels of releasing energy from thalamus up. And when the energy is too much and cannot be handled by nano layers to go through because they are in a superconductor condition, then they release the energy into the physical part, which is the upper arm and upper leg, inside the two contact points, and then we see paralysis and the rest of it. Because when you breathe fast, or when you go through the emotional, that the energy of the air conversion becomes fast, then you release the energy because you have, or you consider as a point of stress, then you become what we call have a stroke, and then you becomes a heart attack if it's different condition. This is one of the most important parts of the physical structure of the being of the man and any beings which is physically manifest itself in the universe. You look at the fish, to any animal which is created, they all have, when they become physically manifested, having an entry point and exit point, that within the realm, this what I call the magnetic wire, which is your intestine nano-coated, they allow different energies to come out. It's the same as when you press the nano layer, you see different currents of magnetic fields from the matter end, as you have measured. And there is no other reason for the manifestation of the physicality. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Keshe. Trying to see if we have any questions in the live stream. There was a question I don't know how relevant it is, but there was. Let me just get it up here.
I think is a lot of digestions needed because it's not what they
Yes.
thought that. As
Yeah.
I said, we more and more in depth to show the body of a man is nothing but the conversion point, and what's the use of all the wars and all the animosity in the humanity. And this kind of teaching is part of the same process.
There was a question regarding sex on the live stream, but that might be a subject for another day and a whole workshop in itself, perhaps.
That's a decision of
It wasn't.
Dr. Ellie. She decides where we go with these things.
It wasn't really a question so much. I guess it was more of a suggestion that the sex also has to work into this. Um, um, well, what we've learned here today somehow has to work into it. And I guess especially some of the younger folks are more interested in that aspect, as they tend to be. So I don't know if we want to get into that today. We're already up to 2 hours and
Because
15
I think
minutes.
there'll be a session for that by Dr. Ellie in the coming time. We
Right.
try to cover it. You cannot cover the whole bit by bit. This section had to be done as one. And the next step is the function of the different organs in this part, what their behavior is and how it is. And hopefully in the coming time we go through showing how diseases through different changes come about, and then that to show that there is much easier way to handle diseases.
Okay. Is there any other questions from the Skype call
I got
at
a
this
question.
point?
I got two questions for him.
Okay, Brett.
All right.
Oh, he's
One,
an alien. Fast.
of course, I'm only part alien. Listen, some people are born with their corpus callosum bridge much larger. So how is that going to affect the brain compared to ours?
Explain to a common man what it is.
The corpus callosum is the bridge between the two hemispheres of the brain.
Yes.
Yes, and some people are born with a much larger bridge and much more connections. So I wanted to know how that affects them compared to a normal person's brain structure.
No different. It's just a conversion of the information. That brain needs that bridge to do the same thing as your brain does with the less of it. Don't forget, just because we all have 5 fingers and on each hand and 2 arms and 2 legs and a heart, that our bodies is exactly made the same way. Otherwise it would have been a photocopying machine. You want a child, there's a photocopy machine, you get one. We are part of the evolution. So any changes or diversion or deviation, it means that amino acid in that structure needs a slightly different thickness and composition to reach the same information.
Okay, thank you for that. And I have one more.
Yeah.
What's going on in the minds of people? Synesthesia, do you know what that is?
No, explain. Anything you use terminology, explain. Because you have to understand we have a large number of people from different cultures and speaking languages. So you have to explain it that we all understand.
Synesthesia is where people say they read a word, they'll get a taste in their mouth, or if they read a letter or word, all the senses get input at once. They get mixed up. If they taste something, they might think of a word, or if they see something, it triggers a sound or a taste. And it's like all the senses get activated at once, whereas us, we isolate them in a way.
All of us have that. All of us have it. But some of us decides to speak about it and some we don't. And subconsciously it's been part of our RNA. This is how you say if they see something they can taste or bring back a taste to them when they see something. All of us, without fail, the human race, it's come through our ancestors, the same information. We see a cactus, we don't touch it because we know there is a pain with it. So does it mean we lack the, what do you call it, the emotional part which you ask for? No. It means we have identified it, we know it, and so we don't touch it. It's very much like one of my children used, the minute it says cactus, because he was pinched and he hurt him, says pain dun, which means it's full of pain, I'm not touching it. We reckon, all of us have this ability. But some of us see it as a point of attention and getting what we call ADD. It brings a point to be able to talk. This is one of my abilities, I can see. You do the same. Why do you feel like going to McDonald's? Because you already know the taste is submerged and is printed in your brain, the taste. You're going for more of the same. You don't taste McDonald's, but you know what it is, and this is what you're going for. And which is most of the foods at the moment, it's salt, connected density, saturation point. You all have, this is part of our life. This is why we don't like to go to Uncle Sam and we go to Uncle George. Because Uncle Sam is always nasty.